Welcome back to True Story with John Gibson. Today we have a very special guest. It is Chris Herren. Chris, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing really well, man. Thank you again for finding the time to come on the show, kind of share more about your journey and your message with everyone.
It's always good, right? I mean, as a guy in recovery and someone who's extremely passionate about the advocacy and sharing the message of recovery, of sobriety, anytime I get an opportunity to do it, it's a blessing.
Yeah, thank you for that, man. And it's important. You said something in a previous interview or something that was so inspiring to me, and it still inspires me to this day. And you're a living example of it. But you said one time, pretty casually, and it was like so, I don't know, man. It was so deep. But you said, "Man, I know the power in sharing a story." And those words kind of rocked me, man. And again, we spoke offline, and I first became familiar with you through the 30 for 30 doc, Unguarded. I was one of those people who didn't know you were a superstar already, man, and had no idea about your struggles. So when it was all presented to me, it was kind of mind blowing. But you were so real that I felt like anybody could have walked away from that having learned a lot. And I don't know, I said a lot right there, but I just kind of want to pick your brain just starting there, man. What was the experience about coming public, sharing your story with the world? How did that change everything?
Yeah, so by accident, like completely by accident. Wow. None of this was planned. When I first got sober, I had no intention of going out and being a public speaker. Like it wasn't even my wheelhouse. And I got a phone call from a woman, and she said, "I really want you to speak to my health class." So I had no license at the time. It was suspended. I was about a year and a half sober. And she said, "I can pick you up. I can buy you breakfast, and then I'll bring you back home." So she picked me up. She bought me breakfast. I went and I presented to probably 15 kids in a health class. And that has now transpired into, almost 2 million kids.
Right.
So yeah, it was, the one thing about my message that I'm very proud of, right, is that public speaking is a word of mouth business. Like you can market yourself all you want, but it's a word of mouth business. And the fact that I've been able to sustain, a career for a decade in this is something that I'm truly, truly proud of.
Mm-hmm. You should be, very much. And you're making such an amazing difference. I know because I've walked a walk in a lot of the ways through your struggles personally. And so I understand the realness in your experiences and the vulnerability and man, the respect I have, because a lot of us wouldn't be so honest to put it out there. But then to see a decade later how you're affecting all these young kids and the difference you're making, it's so inspiring to me.
Yeah. It's, listen, putting your stuff, putting out there is not easy. There's no doubt about that, right? And,
sure.
There was some nights my wife and I, we questioned how far we went with some things. But the reality is there's not a lot of people willing to do it, right? There's not a lot of people willing to get messy and say, like, this is what I looked like at my most vulnerable moment. This is how I felt when I was at my weakest, lowest, vulnerable moment. Not a lot of people are willing to do it. So to share it and let others identify and say, like, listen, I've been there. I understand that. I appreciate that. And then work from their space. It's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you mind in this transitioning a little, but you shared before one of the most beautiful stories I've ever heard about the Project Purple. And kind of what inspired that and the young lady. And do you mind kind of recapping or resharing that story?
Sure. So, listen, I was 32 years old. I had no money, no health insurance. I had 2 children and my wife was pregnant, and I had just suffered my 4th overdose. And a hand was extended, and Chris Mullen and his family worked behind the scenes to find me a center that would take me. And if it wasn't for the Mullen family, I'm not sure where I would be today, but they gave me a second chance. And I wanted to be somebody's Chris Mullen. So I started the Herren Project. And Herren Project, my foundation, has in the last 10 years given around 7 million in scholarships to the treatment centers for people who are suffering. Through that, it was supported by, we have 38 states represented with kids who are involved in the program. And it all started from one girl in a school announcing out loud that she was in recovery. And I watched other kids laugh like it was a joke. And for me, as an adult man who has children, like, I was so proud of her. But then all of a sudden it just downshifted, because I realized at that age, it's looked upon as soft, weak. And I said, from that moment on, we're going to change this up. You know, we're going to give the kids who have struggled, we're going to give the kids who struggle and the kids who are on the other side of struggle a voice. And Project Purple kind of came out. And because of that, the roots of it, the beginning, you know, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of kids all across the country taking part in it.
That's awesome. What an amazing mission. And what an amazing mission. And like, as corny as it sounds, it's like, it really is true that children are our future, like literally, you know, and even as someone who personally wanted to kind of go back in the beginning, I found, like, kind of through my own journey, I wanted to fake it till I make it. I wanted to be this type of person. So I'd go and do good things. And then after a while, I was like, man, I've been doing this long enough. I might be that guy by now. You know, I've changed through this process. And for me, it was selfishly motivated, but it was helping others kind of thing. And it became this good kind of a cycle opposed to a bad one sort of a thing. And the truth is, that was great. But what I learned through that was, like, I need to start earlier. Like, it's cool to talk to other prisoners or people in foster care like myself, but like kids, like, if you want to make a difference. And then I found all of your material and some of your public, and I was like, Chris is doing such important stuff here, man. And let me kind of ask this too, because again, I'm not a basketball guy, but again, I'm so invested in your success. And I want to pick your brain about this, because not a basketball guy, but your son's killing it, right? Chris Jr., basketball star. Is it crazy to see, you know, you have your story and now his?
He is not, right? Like, Christopher was a kid that was willing to take a chance on himself, right? And he went to Boston College and earned a scholarship as a walk-on. You know, I'm very careful with the word star, right? Okay. Like, I don't even think I was a star, right? Like, I had a good college career, and I ended up playing in the NBA for like a blink, right? Yeah. Christopher, my greatest success as a father around sports is the fact that when Christopher was completely drained and his happiness was in jeopardy, had the ability and trust to call me and say, I don't want to do this anymore. Wow. Like, to me, that's where I felt as a dad, like a very proud moment that, you know, with everything attached to it, you know, with my history, we share the same name. And, you know, it was for him to kind of pull the plug and say, Dad, like, I trust that you're going to be okay with this. And I want to tell you, I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, that was just, it was special. So, you know, there's a price to pay for, you know, for what I did, right? It's, you know, and there's even a greater price today. Like, I couldn't imagine social media following me, you know, when I was 19 years old playing basketball. But, you know, there's so many measurables. Like, you know, Christopher, he tried it, he took a swing at it, he pivoted, and then realized, you know, at 21 years old, he's like, I'm just not feeling it, you know, and life's too short to not feel it. Yes.
Yeah, no, you said it. The fact that he felt maybe safe enough to come to you and have that is the win. And like, that's beautiful. He was so brave to try your sport. He already had your name.
Yeah, totally. You know? I wish he didn't, right? Like, not to mention the fact he's got the same last name, which, you know, now it was one thing to carry that name. Like, the first 10 years of his life, you know, I was known as like a heroin addict. On the street, you know what I mean? I was known as a complete failure, a bum, a junkie, a waste of talent. Right. And then you know, that name over the last 13 years has kind of evolved into something different.
Absolutely.
But you know, he's a special kid. He grew up, he lived two lives. My wife and I say it often, right? Like I have a 13-year-old who, you know, my oldest Christopher and my daughter Samantha, you know, they look at him sometimes and say, you have no idea
right
what life used to be like. And I'll give you a little example, right? I have a cat, right? I got 3 dogs and I have a cat, right? And the cat's name is Jack, and Jack's the oldest. So 14 years ago, we went to a rescue, and we figured we'd take the cat home. My daughter wanted a cat, but we couldn't afford the cat. The cat was $70. So we went home, and my wife and I, we put some change together. We just did everything we could to get that $70 and go back and buy a cat. And now Jack is sick. He's old. He's 14. He's not doing well. And my kids remember that we couldn't afford a cat, you know, and you know, and here's Drew, who has never felt that. He's never lived that life, you know? So, you know, Jack the cat in our family, like he's come from nothing, and you know, he's lived in a couple of different houses, and it's pretty cool.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. That's really great. And wow, that's pretty cool. I'll leave that where that is. That's just a cool like illustration of what that is, man. That's beautiful. It's pretty amazing too. I think in a way, like, you know, your kids, like, I mean, the difference between your oldest and your youngest too, like, they're going to be very prepared for life because no doubt. Right. And listen, my kids know recovery is the priority. Wow. Like if you sit down with them and you ask them what's the most important part of your family, you know, they're going to say recovery, you know, because as recovery goes, we go. And as recovery grows, we grow as a family. Wow. And, you know, it's, they're very well aware of that, you know, and, you know, if I could go back, kids often say to me, like, not only kids, but adults, they said, like, if you could go back, would you change it? And the only thing I would change, I would erase some moments that my kids remember, you know, like, those are things for them, right? For their sake. Yeah. Totally. Right. Yeah, absolutely. If I had that type of superpower, you know, I would dive into their brain and see what they feel and what's like up front, and I would erase a couple of things if I could. No, I understand completely. I know. I think it's look, that's what like rock bottoms are, you know, and it's interesting too because as I talk to people and learn more about myself through other people and stuff too, sharing with me, it's not like always drugs. Like it's not, I think people really think it drugs, and that's a really quick and easy way to get there. But you could be 40 days sober and find a rock bottom, you know? Oh, yeah. I mean, it's, you know, it kind of ebbs and flows, right? Life. And, you know, I'm coming up on 14 years sober. And, you know, like I say to people all the time, there's days I don't want to be me. You know, like there's days I do not want to be me. There's days I find myself in a hotel room in this random town. And I'm like, I wish I could just shut the noise off. I wish I could turn the lights out and just forget for the next 10 hours. And, but I can't, right? Like we can't shut the noise off anymore. And we found other ways to cope, to quiet that noise. And, you know, being part of a recovery community and being part of, you know, a movement in a lot of ways that's so special is, you know, it saved me in so many ways. Absolutely. You know, what's interesting about you to me, Chris, is that, and I'll just pretend this isn't recording for other people to listen, but like, so amazing to me that it was all an accident. It wasn't a plan because you connect so well with people speaking. And I think it's like God-given, man. I think this was your gift. Like, I think as a former athlete, right? Like, you know, the benefits that I carry with me from being, you know, an athlete is preparation, right? It's preparation, it's game planning, it's preparing. And, you know, that stuff, most of my life was kind of
was just drilled into me, right? Like, we're going to know the opponent, right? We're going to know the opponent. We're going to know their strength. We're going to know their weakness. So we're going to scout and we're going to watch.
Right.
And then we're going to execute, right? And to me, I had that approach to public speaking. Like, I was willing to say, you know, this really doesn't hit the kids, you know, like it's not something that I see as kind of sticking. So I'm going to move on to something different. So, you know, over the years, my speaking has been tweaked so many times. And, you know, an example is I don't tell my story to children anymore, right? Like, I don't go in there and tell my story. You know, and I've said this, you know, when it comes to drugs, when it comes to how we educate our children, I think we just put so much emphasis on the worst day and we forget the first day.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's easy to show our children pictures of drug addicts and say, hey, come on, sit down, watch this 30 for 30. Watch what happened to this guy.
Right.
But like, if you're going to show the damage, the devastating effects of drugs, you have to also show when they were little and how it began. And the whole spectrum of addiction has to be presented. So, you know, I went in there to kids and I changed my presentation and I talked about the first day. I talked about self-esteem and self-worth and my confidence, which was a front, you know, when I was younger and all that stuff. So, you know, it's the ability to kind of, you know, and in recovery, there's a lot of humility, right? Like, there's a lot of humility and to be humble enough to say, like, this isn't working.
Yeah. Yeah. And to reform and reshape your message. That's awesome. That's amazing, man. It's cool that you were able to adapt all those lifelong skills, like you said. But moreover, again, to be able to shift gears into more, what do they need to hear? Not more about like, what am I trying to get forth, you know, or present? And I agree, you know, that was another thing that was mentioned in the 30 for 30 that I love that you said, you know, because I was in those assemblies, man, as a kid, and I go, I'll never be like this loser. I'll never be like this guy. And I think kids think that, who doesn't think that way in their mind, you know, like you think I'm so far away from that, I could never be that way. And then one day you wake up and you realize, like, man, hey, I've done things I never thought I'd do, you know, and then you got to reconcile those things and what you're doing to help these kids understand way early on, like you said, it's so responsible, the cycle of addiction. And maybe why the choice is why in the beginning, not just the scary part at the end. So awesome, man.
Again, I think it's just we've kind of, it was all about scaring and not educating. It was like, your brain's on drugs, look what it does. You know, it's the war on drugs. Right. It's like but it's not the education, and it's not like in 2022. Wellness still is not a core class in our children's school system. And it baffles me that with all of the things that we've now are beginning to understand, whether it's, you know, anxiety, you know, depression, bullying, technology, like, how do our children not walk into school and sit in a classroom and focus on their health, their wellness? Right. And we just do so little around it, right? And for years it's been like, well, we'll put this commercial on, and this is going to scare kids away from drugs. You know, not understanding, you know, why these kids would ever put themselves in that situation. Exactly right.
Yeah, but it's about educating, and what you're doing is the mission. It's the mission to make a difference, and it's amazing. I'm going to include all of your social media tags, but I'd like to ask this. You know, where do you go? Do you have any good resources to like kind of fill your bucket, or, you know, I'm just curious where that lies, maybe.
Yeah, like so there's some things on social media that I just fall in love with, like you know, that all that good movement, right? All that feel good stuff for me is where I kind of find myself. You know, I live in this, I'm unbelievably fortunate, right? Like right now I'm at my wellness center, and, you know, I just sat in the office as I'm watching people go to group, and I'm just watching one at a time, you know, people walking past my window to go upstairs to practice and to work and to feel better about themselves, so they don't have to, you know, fall to a substance, and kind of lean on that. So, you know, I'm very blessed that the way my life has kind of unfolded, it's 100% around recovery. So I get to kind of witness, I got a front row seat to miracles every day.
Yeah, beautiful. How inspiring is that? So people want to kind of follow your wellness center or something. I know Herren Talks is a great resource, right? Where else can people maybe reach out to learn more about this and all these sort of awesome projects?
So there's 3, right? So Herren Talks, Herren Wellness is my wellness centers, and you know, one is located in Massachusetts and the other one's located in Virginia. And Herren Project, which is something that, you know, I'm unbelievably proud of. I mean, the people there have kind of took the baton, the torch, and went with it. And, you know, the impact they've had over the years at that foundation has just been absolutely amazing. So it's those 3: Herren Project, Herren Wellness, Herren Talks, and I'm easy to find.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. Again, Chris, you're so inspiring, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm with you.
Have a great day, Chris. Thank you again. This is True Story, John Gibson, today featuring Chris Herren.
See you, bud.
See you, man.